Yeah, let's get going. Um, my name's Kerry. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Kerry Watkins. I'm the founder of Social for Good. I have been working in social media for, 15 years now. It'll be 16 years soon. It's obviously an entirely different landscape from what it was in 2010 when I started it. Um, this is some of my lovely team here. Every time we do a photo shoot, we then need to do a recruitment drive. So there's actually an 11th person starting in our team next month. But we are a team of social media specialists. We include strategists, trainers, social media managers, you name it. If it's something that happens on social media, we have somebody that's an expert in it. If you don't know who we are, Social for Good, we're a specialist social media agency. We work with purpose-driven brands and charities. So any organisation that's doing good in the world for people or planet, we want to help them with their social media to make a bigger impact in the world through strategic and ethical use of the platforms. But we're also on a bit of a side mission through our work to try and make the social media landscape a more positive place to be. If we can make a net positive impact on people through the people that we work with, then we're winning. Nina, do you want to do a quick intro?
Hi everyone, I'm Nina. I head our strategy team, and I'm very lucky to have spent pretty much all of my career just working with the good guys, just charities, nonprofits. And yeah, I'm really excited for this webinar because when we work with charities and we do workshops, LinkedIn is always a topic that sometimes brings people together, sometimes it divides them. So I'm very curious to see what we're going to discuss on the webinar and then also in the chat. So throughout the webinar, if you have any questions about anything that Kerry's talking about, please feel free to share your questions in the chat and I'll try to answer them or save them for her to address at the end.
Thanks, Nina. So, well, we've got 55 people joined. That's awesome. Yeah, welcome to our social snapshots. We do these webinars at the end of every month, basically to share everything that we've learned from working with hundreds of charities and charity marketing and comms teams. And the aim is that you all leave this session with ideas that you can actually use. What we're going to cover in the next 30 minutes is we'll just talk a little bit about what's the issue with LinkedIn. Like Nina said, I think sometimes it's got a bit of a bad rep, or charities perhaps haven't fully immersed themselves in LinkedIn. Then, as the title suggests for this webinar you've signed up for, we're going to look at 3 LinkedIn mistakes, the 3 things that we see people doing that we think are holding them back. But I do have a short success story as well to share with you. And I will talk a little bit about the Social for Good Accelerator, which is a training program that we run for charities. This webinar is not a hard sell for the accelerator, I promise you. The aim with these webinars is that we give you real value that can make a real difference in your work. But everything that I'm going to talk about today is grounded in our work with hundreds of charities, like I said, and I believe that it is doable, whether you have a large comms team or whether you're a team of one, it's doable. But what I want to do first, just while a few people are still arriving, we're going to do a quick poll. I want to get a bit of a sense in the room about what your key challenges are with LinkedIn. So if you can launch the poll, Nina. You can tick as many of these as you feel are a challenge for you. And are we recording, Nina?
Yes, we
Oh,
are.
thank you. I've got too much going on my screen, I can't tell. God, you guys are quick poll takers. I'm impressed. Okay, we're nearly there. A few more people, and then we'll share the results. Or maybe someone's nipped off to boil the kettle. Maybe we should share the results now. Okay, so the biggest challenge is content, knowing what works. Okay, interesting. And not having a specific LinkedIn strategy. We have performance, content not getting great results, which I guess may be a byproduct of not knowing what content's working really well. And support, I mean, I'm not surprised to see that, colleagues not supporting the page or using their own profiles enough. I know that's a real kind of frustration for charity comms people that we work with. Okay, but there's a bit of everything there. And 14% think it's too cringe. Well done for turning up to this webinar. Maybe I can decringe it a little bit for you. LinkedIn, I think, is my favourite social network, and I'm quite passionate about it, but I do get that it can be a bit weird at times. Okay, let's crack on then and see if I can perhaps address some of these challenges. Okay, so is this familiar for anybody? What should I post about today? You might have seen this. I'm not suggesting that you all post this as marketers, but maybe you go onto LinkedIn personally, B2B lessons from getting engaged, the heroism of hiring a pregnant woman, increased productivity from working in the bathroom / garden / on an ironing board during lockdown, career lessons from my kids' lemonade stand, bit US focused, that one. I think we've all, I'm seeing some smiles and nods, so I think we've all seen that on LinkedIn, which I think isn't very helpful for making us kind of think about it as a strategic place for our comms. What I thought might be fun is if you have seen anything like this, you know, what I've learned from B2B sales by doing insert random activity, please share it in the chat, because Nina and I will have a lovely little laugh afterwards. So yeah, let us know the most tenuous link that you've seen that somebody's created a LinkedIn post out of. I would love to see that. So, I mean, as well as these kind of posts, you can probably relate to, you know, you're scrolling down your feed and you see a post that looks a little bit interesting, and then you click on see more and suddenly your whole screen is like War and Peace. It's like, I have not asked for that. I do not have time to read it. You're kind of scrolling past. Those are the two things that I think are my main kind of cringe factors with it, but I still love it despite that. And I do mute people and I do remove connections because I'm not letting that ruin my LinkedIn joy. And if that does relate, if that kind of resonates for you, I hope that what I'm going to focus on next is how to use it strategically, and that you can find a way to kind of push that aside and use LinkedIn in a way that actually works for you and your charity. So before we get into these 3 biggest mistakes that I've promised to share, I just wanted to say that if you recognise yourself in any of these, it's completely normal. We're not having a dig. Most organisations do these 3 things at some point. You know, I know that we've done them too at Social for Good. And the point is not to criticise, it's just to show you why these approaches don't work as well as they could. So if any of this sounds familiar, please don't worry. You're in good company. Like I said, we're not criticising. The important thing is what we do next, how you can actually fix these and make them work. So I won't just point out the mistakes. I'm going to give you some simple fixes and a list of recommendations for each that you can take away today. So mistake number 1 is relying solely on the company page for all of your content. Why is this a problem? First up, it's about reach. So LinkedIn doesn't prioritize company pages unless you're putting ad spend behind them. They rarely get that kind of breakthrough. Personal profiles, on the other hand, get far more visibility because the algorithm is designed to favor people over brand pages. That's just the way that LinkedIn is built. And then there's trust, and that's just the human condition. People trust people. So a post from your CEO, from yourselves, might feel more authentic than the same update coming from what's technically a faceless company page. Human to human connection on social will always outperform brand to audience broadcasting. And because LinkedIn is a different kind of network, we have a huge opportunity here. But finally, it's a problem because I think there's wasted potential. If you're only posting from the company page, you're leaving a lot on the table. Every person in your team has their own network, their own credibility, their own voice and opinion. And if you're ignoring that or not leveraging that, it means slower growth for your page, perhaps fewer introductions, perhaps missed chances to connect with the right people. And at the end of the day, people resonate with what's real. And that's why LinkedIn works so much better when your people are a part of the conversation, not just your logo. So what's the fix? The fix is, and this is not an easy fix, this first one, it takes time and effort, but it's about building an integrated approach with the people in your charity. So I've got some examples here. This is a brilliant example from Affinity Trust to show that when senior leaders or staff post content or share content, it helps a lot. So the Affinity Trust company page did a post that you can see on the left. They introduced their head of comms, Jill, and then Jill shared it, which you can see on the right, from her personal profile. Now, she didn't even have to write a huge caption. It was just a small one. I did a thing, but that's, it's quite nice and informal. But this share picked up far more engagement because people interact more with people. But seeing these two together, the combination of how these posts were shared reached much further than either one would have done on its own. So the company page you've got a consistent output, but then you've got individuals bringing kind of authenticity, trust, that extra bit of reach and engagement. Now, another example of that integrated approach is Aza from Edulution. Edulution are an edtech non-profit that work in Africa, and they're part of our success story that I'm going to share later. So Aza posted a personal reflection, a great set of powerful photos, and then Edulution shared Aza's post. Then they also added their own voice in the comments, and this is really key. So that shows the kind of public recognition of Aza's contribution. It reinforces the message of the post and then extends the post through that repost and comment to a wider audience from the organisation. So it's really simple, but it's an effective way for a company and the people within the company to work together so that that content travels further. And then my final example is looking at Hope for Justice. This is a CEO of a charity that's worth looking at if you're really trying to inspire your CEO to step up and be more active on social. And I think this shows when senior leaders on LinkedIn either stay silent or just kind of hit share without doing anything else, it shows the missed opportunity. Their voices as senior leaders carry much more weight when they speak authentically, whether it's sharing sector insights, personal reflections, or behind the scenes experiences. And when they post in their own words, I see them as kind of social media champions. They're not just mouthpieces for a brand. And that really helps to humanize your organization. They're also, if they're quite social savvy, usually really well networked. So any activity that they do on LinkedIn opens doors to peers, to influencers, to potential funders who might never see your page. Tim Nelson's posts, as I said, are good. There's too many to include in a short webinar, but you can have a look at his stuff on LinkedIn. His posts are reflective, personal. They clearly position him as an advocate for Hope for Justice, who are tackling modern day slavery. And it really amplifies what they're doing. And they're a great example to look at of that integrated approach. And it's not just CEOs and leaders. The example on the right is Callum Harvey, who's just a subject expert. He's a brilliant subject expert within Hope for Justice. And he could have just shared a report, but he's just nicely in the caption shared his own perspective, but then joined the discussion in the comments and actually being social. So what are the actions that you could take from this? What are the recommendations? It starts off with, I think, mapping the right people, trying to identify in your organization who is or could be active on LinkedIn, whether it's your CEO, directors, trustees, subject experts, or team members that are working on the ground with the beneficiaries you support. Anyone that's naturally passionate, that's engaged. You don't need everyone to do it, but if you have a mix of the right voices, then you're off to a winning start. You do normally need to coach them. That's why I said at the beginning, this fix is easier said than done, but often people need a little bit of support. It could be a bit of light training, could be a workshop. We've done a lot of workshops with senior leaders, and they don't need a huge amount of support to get going. They just need a bit of focus. Or if you think they're pretty LinkedIn savvy already, it could be a simple kind of content starter pack. The goal of any kind of coaching or training is just to make them feel confident about what to talk about, give them some confidence in the style and tone, so that they're not kind of going onto LinkedIn and staring at a blank box. And then it's about building habits and integrating activity. So you can use the company page as the anchor point and then encourage people within the organization to add their own comments or to repost with context. I think that context, their caption, is really key, not just reposting. It will perform a lot better if they add their own thoughts. And if you can start to make that a kind of a weekly habit, you know, sharing things with them or kind of building up some kind of rhythm, it will increase visibility over time. And really importantly, celebrate the wins that you have. So if you have some success, if a senior leader's involvement leads to new followers, a media mention, or like a conversation about a new partnership, like really shout about that internally, and that will reinforce this strategy in your team and encourage others to do it as well. And just yesterday or the day before, I read that LinkedIn are trialing, perhaps not have rolled it out everywhere, that personal profile posts, and again, I'm not sure if this is just premium accounts or not, will tell you the new followers gained from a particular post. It's just something that I read about recently, so I'm not sure of the details, but I thought that's a really interesting way for people within an organisation to see the impact of what they're doing for the company page, for their own following. Okay, second mistake, publishing dry organisation-centric content. Why is this a problem? Well, just because LinkedIn is seen as this professional, businessy space, it does not mean that content has to be dry, or certainly not all about us as an organisation. Self-absorbed messaging is a problem, and it's a really easy trap to fall into. I think too many charity posts that we've seen kind of sound a bit like internal reports. We did this, we won this. And it sounds like it's very important internally, but to an external audience, it can sometimes come across as self-absorbed and not resonate. And then you can kind of lack that emotional connection. So if the posts are just updates, facts, announcements, they don't necessarily spark any feeling. And if people aren't feeling anything, they keep scrolling. And if they keep scrolling, they're not going to stop and engage with it. It also forgets the why. And I think this is really true for a lot of charities we've worked with. Charities will often share with us in a post like, what happened? We ran an event, we've launched a report. But what they forget to explain is like, why does that matter? And without that context, sometimes your audience can't see the bigger picture. So sometimes it just needs to be wrapped in a little bit more storytelling. And no audience value. If every post is about what you did, your audience will eventually start to switch off. Apart from your kind of, your internal team and your kind of big supporters. People come onto LinkedIn, as I'm sure you go onto LinkedIn, to be inspired, to learn something, to connect. You don't just want to read announcements. And finally, I think sometimes when these posts from amazing charities do sound a bit dry or organisation-centric, they start to become interchangeable. They can sound just like another charity. Nothing's really standing out because they're talking at people rather than with their audience and sparking a conversation. So what's the fix for this one? The fix is just flipping the script from all about us to all about them. So when your audience can see themselves in the post or take something useful away from it, that's when LinkedIn really starts to deliver for your charity. So shifting the perspective, this is an example again from Affinity Trust. They're not all from Affinity Trust, I promise. This post works because it isn't just an update about the organisation. It takes a universal, relatable question, what does a good summer look like for you? But it connects it to their mission. So the audience are kind of invited into the conversation. They're not just told about the charity's work. And the people they support are central in the images and the stories, which makes it feel a bit more human and authentic. And I've got another example from Dogs for Good. We're very proud to work with Dogs for Good. And I'm aware that I'm talking about dogs and social media, which is a bit of a winning formula, but the principles are here, I promise. So their mission is to bring people and dogs together to unlock the potential of this powerful connection. And it's a great example, I think, this one, of audience first content that connects more. So instead of them saying, we've been doing dog training sessions this week, which is more of an announcement about them, they flipped it to share tips that the audience can actually use. So it's practical, it's seasonal as well, which is great. It ties directly to their mission about helping people build better relationships with dogs. And it's the kind of content that people are more likely to save, to share, to come back to them because it's genuinely useful. And sorry, one more Dogs for Good example, because I just couldn't not include these photos. And it's about tone. Tone does really matter on LinkedIn. We mustn't just assume it's full of white businessmen in briefcases. We need to put a bit more personality in there. I believe strongly you don't have to sound overly formal or corporate. And actually, sometimes the posts that land the best are ones that have a bit of personality. So this example, it's light-hearted, it's playful. I know it's easier for animal charities than some others, but it invites the audience to join in the fun by suggesting names for the dog's sleeping positions. And that's just a simple question, and some really nice comments came out of it. And even though this suits their brand voice, and you will all have your charity brand voice to work within, it reminds people there's real humans behind the brand, and that really drives connection. So it's not just about what you say, but it's about how you say it. You want people to feel approachable with your content. They're more likely to engage. So our recommendations here are, you might want to go away and kind of audit your posts. Take a number of posts that you've done recently. How many do you feel have positioned more about you as an organisation than your audience? Ask what's in it for your audience. Are there any kind of updates and statements that you might want to reposition or could have done differently? Think about conversation hooks, the beginning or end of a post, to spark some comments. And experiment with formats, kind of polls, short videos, behind the scenes content, rather than static news. Think if there's another way, another angle to share some of your content. Okay, final mistake. Now, this is about not investing in proactive community management. Most of us are familiar with reactive comms on LinkedIn, replying when somebody tags the organisation, or responding to comments that people have left on your post. And that is super important, but it only takes you so far. So proactive comms, if you're not familiar with the term, just means stepping into conversations outside of your social space instead of waiting for those conversations to come to you. So going out and engaging with your sector, commenting on people's posts, sharing your perspectives on news, celebrating your partners, tagging people in relevant discussions, etc. The way I think of it is, at a networking event, reactive comms is standing at your stand and waiting for people to come over and talk to you. Proactive comms is walking out into the room, introducing yourself and joining conversations that are already happening. So why is this a problem? Well, reactive comms is fine for listening and responding, but if that's all you do, you're only going to be able to get as far as kind of shallow relationships. You're not really part of the community. It can also make you look passive, like you only showed up when somebody kind of dragged you into a conversation, and it doesn't position your charity as a leader in your field. And for charities, credibility often comes from being seen as a voice that drives the discussion, not following the discussion. Another problem is visibility. You can end up talking to the same people over and over instead of reaching new audiences or prospective partners or funders. And finally, I kind of see this as a networking blind spot. So if you're not present in sector-wide conversations, you risk being invisible in the spaces where those biggest opportunities emerge. It could mean missing a funder who's scanning the LinkedIn feed for organisations doing excellent work, or being left out of a policy debate your charity should have had a voice in. Could mean partners or peers kind of overlooking you simply because you weren't visible in that discussion. So the fix is, unsurprisingly, to be more proactive and less passive. Go out and engage, comment, connect, contribute. This is where the real relationships are being built. If you joined our Building Community webinar recently, you'll recognise this diagram that we used from the Accelerator programme, and it just shows how the two types of community management work together. Reactive comms keeps you listening and responding. Proactive comms helps you grow and reach new audiences. And then the real magic happens when you integrate both. That's where you see the biggest impact for increased engagement, increased follower growth, and we see that with our clients. Proactive comms also shows you're part of the conversation, so it shows leadership and credibility. It shows that you're not just broadcasting. It kind of signals confidence and you've got something valuable to add. It helps build stronger relationships. As I said, likes are great, but they can be a bit shallow. Real lasting relationships can come from more interesting debates and conversations where you're adding your take. And sorry, my dog's barking. And I'm just going to let him out of the room. He was so well behaved for so long, and it did not last. Apologies. He was jealous of the dogs for good. Works with the algorithm. So LinkedIn rewards the more proactive you are, the more you're commenting, the more visibility it's going to grant you. So I have a short success story to show that actually what I'm talking about works in practice. And this is Hannah, the lovely Hannah Isbister from Edulution, who I mentioned earlier. They're a small edtech charity working across Southern Africa. And like loads of charities, LinkedIn is always a bit of an afterthought. So most of Hannah's focus was on Facebook and Instagram. It's where she'd got more traction in the past. And she came on our Accelerator programme in the summer or beginning of the summer. And when I spoke to her afterwards to get feedback, I was really surprised that she said the LinkedIn module was her favourite, which I mean, I love LinkedIn, but I don't expect everyone else to find that their favourite module of the course. But she said she started to see LinkedIn differently, and instead of just posting occasionally on the company page and kind of seeing it as a bit of a notice board, she started to show up in sector conversations. She was commenting, connecting, sharing insights. She made outreach a habit, so she started to build LinkedIn into her weekly routine, not just when she kind of occasionally found the time, and essentially brought others with her. And I think this was the big key as well. She managed to encourage leaders and colleagues to post, to reshare, to join in the dialogue. And the big shift was seeing LinkedIn not as extra work, but as a valuable channel that was really worth investing in. And that change in mindset really unlocked the results. And I've just taken this from a case study that's on our website, if you did want to read the whole thing under our work. So 177% increase in impressions, 385% increase in engagement. But what was really amazing to me was that they accessed grant money from some proactive communications that Hannah was doing, and their CEO got a keynote speaker engagement at an international conference. And she genuinely said all of that would not have happened without proactive comms. So really interesting case study that shows if you do start to invest in LinkedIn, it can pay off. So what could you do to help make proactive comms stick? So I think there's three things that I'd recommend. The first is building it in. So the easiest way to make sure that you do proactive comms is to build it into your schedule, creating a rota if you work as a team, but making sure that you have time allocated to spend time engaging outside of your page. And think about adding value. So don't just stop at likes or reshares. Encourage your team to comment with insights, experiences, questions, and celebrate wins. Like I said before, if something really pays off, whether it's a new partnership, new funding, or just a conversation that helps to build your network, these outcomes kind of show that it's worth making the effort. I think the Accelerator is a great course, especially when I hear kind of feedback from Hannah about how well it worked. I'm just going to tell you really quickly a little bit more about it before we wrap up, and then we'll have a little chat and answer some questions. So the advice that I've shared today, the guidance you've heard today, it's all from the Accelerator. We sell this as an 8-week program, but it's up to 12 months, so it can be self-paced. But there are 4 live calls and 8 pre-recorded modules, and some modules have multiple lessons. The whole idea of the program is to help charity marketing and comms teams go from reactive to strategic without burning out along the way. There's so much packed in there in terms of templates and guidance. There's community support as well. And yeah, it was built for charities, but also built by charities as well. So we surveyed hundreds of charity social media managers and had loads of conversations to bring the whole thing together. If it sounds like something you want to know more about, Nina's going to share a link to my calendar in the chat, and promise you it's not a hard sell, there's no pressure, but I can answer any questions you might have about it, and send you some more info. So to wrap up, the 3 mistakes we see happening the most on LinkedIn from charity marketers are relying solely on the company page. The content is too organisation centric and can be a bit dry, and the community engagement is very reactive and not proactive. So the fixes are to try and get the team on board to build an integrated approach, to flip your content so it's about your audience, not about you, and bring them into it, and to be proactive, not passive. And I've slightly overrun with my target of time, but I'm going to stop talking now and hand over to you.